Hello, my name is Brian Looney. I'm Head of Digital, Smart Programs and Broadband Officer with Kerry County Council, and I'm delighted to be asked by the Department of Rural and Community Development to give a presentation to the Mobile and Broadband Task Force Forum on connectivity as an enabler for balanced regional development, with a particular focus on the work of the local telecoms forum we put in place in the Black Valley in County Kerry. In the presentation, I'll be covering a number of topics. In terms of the Black Valley, we'll be looking at a brief history of communications in the valley. We'll be talking about the importance of engagement with the local community and how the community were really key to solving and addressing the issues, as well as identifying them. We'll talk about how we created a forum to share information and to work on the problems. We'll talk about the initiatives and the projects that were undertaken. We'll talk about where we're at now and what the next steps may be. And I'll also give some examples of wider connectivity as an enabler examples of Kerry, with a particular focus on the development of hubs over the last few years, both at the enterprise level and at the community level, the BCP side. I'm going to start off with a video, just to give people a sense as to where the Black Valley is and what it is. So it literally sits under the highest ridges in Ireland. It's a short distance, as the Chinese air balloons might fly from Killarney. Access is difficult. You come in over the Gap of Dunlower, the Mall's Gap, neither of which are easy routes to traverse. The footage here is from the easternmost part of the valley. It's in the Killarney National Park. As you look to the west and as you look to the east, there's really spectacular views, and you can see and appreciate a sense as to what the valley is topologically. But it's not just a place, it's also a community. And people have made their living here for hundreds and hundreds of years. We have a church, we have a school, and there's a huge amount of people visit the valley and engage with the community every year. As you'll see from these shots, there really is 360-degree panoramas all over the Black Valley. It really is a stunning location. It's situated on some of Ireland's premier walking and hiking routes, and it really does afford a spectacular experience for people who visit. Some of the views that you'll see here are more to the west of the valley, again along the Kerry Way, which runs the length of the Black Valley on stages 1 and 2. And you know, people who live up here in the most western part of the Black Valley, before you head over towards Glencar direction, they also need connectivity, and they also need to participate in society. Again, traffic congestion isn't a problem that you tend to see in the Black Valley, but it is a remote place, and the community who live here, they need to be able to participate fully in today's society and in today's economy, and connectivity is a key enabler for that participation. So when I addressed the forum, I asked people to stand up as though we were doing a warm-up and to stretch out. I asked people to sit down if they had decent broadband at home, not necessarily fibre to the home, but certainly what would qualify as high-speed broadband. I gave people a chance to sit down if they had enough mobile phone coverage just to make a call and to send and receive text messages. And again, I asked anybody who could get a landline or who had a landline to make and receive phone calls over the twisted copper pair type service that we all take for granted, including the ability to make emergency phone calls, to sit down. And again, that was left a hall that was that had everybody seated, because that loss of connectivity across the board is an issue that's really quite unique to areas like the Black. And that led to what we call the problem statement, because for the residents of and the visitors to the Black Valley, there is no or poor broadband in most of the valley areas. There is no or poor mobile coverage on any network in most of the valley areas. And there's no copper. So there's no or a poor landline service, as I'll show you later on, across most of the valley area. It's what we call the connectivity triple whammy, and it's something that's quite unique to the Black Valley, and is obviously causing significant ongoing issues for the people who live there. Those impacts were clearly magnified during COVID-19, And I remember being up there where I met a lad who was working from home, remote working, except he couldn't remote work from home. He had to rent an apartment in Killarney, 45 minutes drive away, in order to be able to remote work, to work from home. And every now and again, that connectivity issue gives rise to protest and to outrage. And again, this is a recent enough story covered in the Times, how the Black Valley phone black spot is putting lives at risk, say residents. This isn't a new problem by any measure or means. This is a story from 2006 from the Irish Times, which talks about how an Oireachtas committee led by its chair was going on a visit to the valley to experience firsthand for themselves the issues people were having with the lack of telecoms, reliable telecoms in the valley. And from later on that year, a report covering one of our council meetings, again comparing the area to Outer Mongolia, talking about how the existing Rurtel system had failed totally, and how it was difficult for people who were working in the tourism industry and those running local businesses, the hostels, accommodation, and agriculture, I suppose, to take bookings and to be able to conduct themselves economically and socially without a reliable phone service. And fast forward to 2022, and those issues are still impacting upon those people. I won't run through this slide in any great detail. It's a quick look at how phone services developed in Ireland. And the first part of the slide is to do with landlines. And it's interesting to read even the Wikipedia article on this. There was an expectation that in the 1980s, with the first kind of digital and automatic switching networks being put in place, that digital services were reaching even the most rural parts of Ireland. Clearly, in terms of fact checking, that isn't right when it came to areas like the Black Valley. And likewise with the development of mobile phone services, while the first mobile phone service was launched in 1986, and we've had iterations of 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G, up to late 2022 and the start of 2023, there was no mobile phone service in the valley. There was no telecom services until the 1990s. There was a system put in place called Rurtel, a radio-based system, which was deployed early in the 1990s. That failed, as we read from those newspaper articles. Didn't like the Irish weather, didn't like the climate, and was difficult to support technically. That was replaced by a WiMAX-based radio system, which offered voice and a small bit of data in 2007. Again, it proves unreliable because today many residents still can't make landline calls on that system. There's no mobile phone service in most of the valley areas except the very lower part of the valleys. And that's on all network profiles and on all networks. And there's, in my estimate, at least 50,000 annual visitors to the Black Valley. They might be walking along the Kerry Way or cycling into the Black Valley, traversing the Gap of Dunlow. There's climbers and hikers on Ireland's highest ridges. And, there's people who can't make a mobile phone call, who can share their experiences while they're out in the valley areas. And I suppose crucially, who can't make an emergency call if something was to go wrong. And they obviously can't access new immersive digital projects or products. So Kerry County Council was a developer of a brilliant Kerry Way app that shares authentic folklore and augmented reality immersive story experience along all 9 segments of the Kerry Way. But if you're in the Black Valley and you wanted to download that app and say, what's going on here? What's the story with these standing stones, for example? You can't immerse those digital products because of that gap in connectivity. And I suppose this brings us to the nub of both defining the problem, but also working on the solution, the role of the community. And community engagement in this whole process has been key. I suppose it started off with representation. So the Mayor of Kerry at the time made representations to me as the broadband officer to meet with residents and to listen to the issues that they had. With the assistance of the Department of Rural and Community Development, we established what's called a local telecom forum. So it was an informal approach to bring people together back in early 2021. That brought together community representatives, local authority management, so myself, the municipal district officer, other Kerry County Council staff as we needed from time to time, brought together representatives from central government, from the policymakers in DRCD, and also from the Department of Communications side. And I suppose that gave us a little bit of leverage to bring in the telcos, both kind of locally and nationally. We were able to bring in the mobile operators, people who are involved in kind of fibre infrastructure, wireless ISPs at a local and a national level. And I suppose after listening to the scale and the impact of the community's connectivity issues, those telcos were given an opportunity to brief the community there on service improvement plans that they had for the area. And I suppose then that led to the development of a number of initiatives and responses. And some of those issues, I'll touch on each of them briefly. There was a Starlink pilot. We developed a BCP site in the Black Valley. We looked at a technology supported by Microsoft called Airband. We had advanced engagement with NBI in relation to the deployment of fibre services. And I suppose the one that ultimately is the game changer for us is the development of new infrastructure and services by Eir Mobile across the entire Black Valley area. Starting with the Starlink Pilot, that's subject to an NDA, so we don't get to talk too much about it. It generated a huge amount of hype. There were stories in the national papers and local papers and national radio around Elon Musk targeting the Black Valley and choosing Kerry for his world domination projects, depending on who you were listening to. But it was great to allow us to properly test Starlink as a broadband solution for these hard to reach rural businesses and homes. And there's a number of Valley families who are using Starlink now for their broadband connectivity and doing so quite successfully. And from Kerry County Council's perspective, again, if I'm coming across businesses that are having difficulty accessing broadband services that they need in order to undertake their business obligations, to engage with suppliers and with customers, that's one of the solutions that I recommend to people who can't maybe wait until 2027 for investments by NBI or by Open Air or by Cyro in terms of fibre broadband. So it is a good interim solution for those businesses and even for residents who are experiencing acute difficulties because of the lack of broadband and the rollout of the National Broadband Plan. And there's one of the Starlink dishes just outside of property. The second initiative we did with the department, I suppose from early doors in terms of the National Broadband Plan, was when the National Broadband Plan was announced, and this idea of creating broadband connection points in rural communities, when that was launched nationally, we were delighted to see that the Black Valley was included as one of those sites, and that was based at the National School in the Black Valley. Unfortunately, the schools were withdrawn by their patron, I suppose, as was their right. And there was no other community use buildings available to us in the Black Valley to build the type of VCP site you see in other community centres and GAA clubs and whatever around the country. So again, working with the department, we proposed to develop a BCP site at the church, and that was only possible with the community and the parish support, as well as the support of the RCD. It wasn't going to be a BCP site in terms of using the inside of the church. That's a place for prayer and for worship, but there was some space outside the church where people could park. There was already some public amenities in terms of waste collection, whatever, in that area. So it was a good location, I suppose, to provide a drive-up Wi-Fi service or a walk-by Wi-Fi service that would give people reasonable speeds and services. I suppose people who use a BCP site will be familiar with the fact that you get a text message in order to enable the free public Wi-Fi. That was an issue in the Black Valley, as I pointed out earlier on, because there's no mobile coverage. So with the department's assistance, again, that issue is fully resolved now. So locals and visitors have the capability to get 150 meg broadband service up and down as they're in the vicinity of the church and the hostel and the shop that's there. So that's the site, and I suppose there's proof. Speeds of 100 megs are routinely available then to people who are accessing Wi-Fi outside the church. Airband was an initiative we looked at with the department again, and with Microsoft and other partners. Local and national WISPs were involved. What we were looking at there was the possibility of providing a wireless high-speed broadband service to all of the houses in the valley. through that Airband initiative that Microsoft run on a global basis. I suppose technically the results were very, very impressive, and this really was a suitable area because of the lack of interference for the frequency spectrums that Airband would use. But I suppose while the project was technically feasible, as we discovered about Eir Mobile's development plans, I suppose one of the things we wanted to be conscious of the whole time was that the community didn't want kind of bespoke solutions. They had their Rortels and they had their WiMAX. They wanted the same type of technologies as everybody else. So it was a project that we parked arising from those concerns and concerns around maybe state aid, given that there was a commercial service going to be delivered. Again, NBI are a key stakeholder in all of this, and as I said, the people in the valley want to get the same service as everybody else when it comes to high-speed fibre. Clearly, there are huge topological and technical and amenity preservation impediments to deploying the same kind of fibre network that we might see rolling out in the other parts of the county. Over 90% of NBI's fibre network is run above ground using telegraph poles. There are no telegraph poles in the Black Valley, and there are no underground services either. So, it's going to be a challenge to get fibre into the valley, particularly as that fibre will have to come over one of the those routes that I spoke about earlier on, Mall's Gap or the Gap of Dunlow. So it's a huge technical challenge, and what we've been doing is working with NBI in relation to design possibilities, and we've asked them to come back with an options report as the next step in that process. We know the deployment area it's going to be served from, but it's the options report as to how the fibre is going to get into the valley and how it's going to be deployed within the valley. That will be the next step, having regard to the various issues that are there. And obviously, as you would have seen from the video earlier on, the preservation of the visual amenity and of the habitat is obviously absolutely crucial. Eir Mobile is the game changer, I suppose, and Eir have had difficulties in the valley as a company for a large number of years now, as you will have picked up from the news reports earlier. Eir have a thing called the Universal Service Obligation with Comreg. So they're on a mission to provide everybody in the state with the ability to make and receive a phone call. So they've been failing in that Universal Service Obligation in the Black Valley. So that's resulted in the critical service users, as I said, critical service issues for users, as I said earlier, around the ability to make even emergency calls. But they also have a license cliff. So the WiMAX licenses, frequency licenses they're using, they're kind of on borrowed time and they're going to expire. So Eir needed to move people off that WiMAX service and onto something else. So what was proposed was that they would develop new mobile infrastructure located at the sites of their existing pole assets within the Black Valley. So there's a number of pole assets that were there for Rortel and were there for the WiMAX product. And, I suppose building the chain back ultimately to Killarney via Ladies View and Mall's Gap and servicing the Black Valley was the objective that Eir Mobile were going to develop. And that will provide both voice and data service profiles for the whole valley area. It would provide crucially a 999 service for people on all mobile networks. And I refer to this as the new Martin McDonagh movie, Three Masts Outside Girrameen, Black Valley, Killarney. But you can see the three generations of the mast infrastructure that's there, including the development of the new monopole there on the right. Beside that is the WiMAX infrastructure, and over on the left is the original Rortel system. And in each case, there's a lot of similarities. Obviously, there's a box of electronics, there's a pole, and there's some radio equipment. And obviously, when it comes to once the new system is bedded down, as part of their planning conditions, the old infrastructure will be physically removed from the site, to make sure that the amenity is damaged as little as possible. But that's the new infrastructure that's in place. And those sites that were originally selected for Rortel and for WiMAX, they're going to service the valley very well in terms of the view sheds that the equipment will have there in terms of providing a service. Again, like we've tested speeds up to 90 megabits per second there, consistently getting over 50 megs per second in terms of the data profile. So there is a 4G, 5G data profile available across most of the valley. In terms of the next steps, we've been working with the community, on an ongoing basis in terms of the service transitions and explaining to them, that the services that they can avail of, how they can move from what they currently have to either fixed cellular access to kind of map their landline service, poor and all as it is, onto a new service that is underpinned by the mobile network, or indeed transitioning to mobile voice and data. Obviously, it's kind of open access infrastructure, as is the norm in the telecoms industry now. So other mobile network operators will also have an opportunity, I suppose, to develop a presence from those sites in the valley. As I said earlier on, the options report we're awaiting on from MBI will be key to the development of fibre in the area. We need to do a little bit of work around the BCP site on signage. So, it's important to let people know, particularly as there's a huge amount of visitors in the area, that there is free public Wi-Fi available from that site. And I suppose we have a number of developmental projects that we want to undertake that are more long-term. So the community wants to work towards a heritage and visitor centre development that will effectively be also a kind of a digital hub within the valley. And we want to continue to develop digital tourism projects and products, and also to develop and encourage people in the valley, a lot of sheep farming going on up there, to encourage precision agriculture, smart agriculture type projects that will be enabled by the connectivity that's now being. Looking at connectivity as an enabler for wider regional development within Kerry, clearly that connectivity underpins social, community and economic development within the county, and that connectivity applies to the physical connectivity of road, rail, air transport, the water networks in terms of our ports, but it also applies to things like trails and greenways and blueways that are kind of developmental, given how important tourism is as an economic sector within County Kerry. But also data connectivity is critical, and it's ubiquitous data connectivity as envisaged in the National Broadband Plan, but also as envisaged in terms of the rollout of a mobile network where there aren't black spots and where 5G service profiles can be developed and delivered. And the third connectivity thing that's really important for regional development is the development of those people and business networks, the education networks, the STEM clusters, the community networks that are in place. They're really, really important to develop that strong, balanced regional development. And I suppose we've had two classes of developing hubs. One is the enterprise hub development, to develop world-class hubs that promote the Kerry entrepreneurial culture, that promote sustainability, and not just within their centres, but within their communities and within the business communities that they service, to have innovation, research and development undertaken, but also to afford people an unbeatable quality of life who have moved to Kerry and are working from those hubs and living in those communities. And then on the other side, we have our development of our community hubs, our BCP sites, digital community hubs, and I suppose leveraging the community network in support of that, using our LCDC, using our PPN network to support and develop the communities, to I suppose turn around the tide of rural depopulation, and the decline of rural economic activity, and I suppose to flip things over and develop these regions, I suppose in balance to the traditional development of congested city areas. And these all support multiple government policies. So our rural future, making remote work, harnessing digital, and a range of climate adaptation and mitigation policies and strategies from the government. They're all supported by the development of this class of balanced regional development. Looking at some of our enterprise hubs, they provide both the human and the data connectivity in world-class facilities. There's mentoring, business supports, peer-to-peer symbiosis and development of clusters in these locations. The county is serviced by road, rail and air networks, and the talent pipeline we have is enabled by what's now 4 universities in the region and 1 in the county. The MTU has footprint in County Kerry now as well. So that's a great thing to enable the development of the region. There's multiple industry segments in Kerry, you know, not just tech, but also in manufacturing, in services, and you know, obviously the tourism industry is really important to us. So things like tourism tech is now being developed from some of these hub sites. We've been looking to drive sustainability in the communities and in the industries and the sectors that are working in and with these hubs. And I suppose looking at the Dingle hub in particular, you know, they've brought sustainability within the community to an absolute massive level. You know, I suppose that's nearly probably the biggest sustainability lab in Europe. If you look at the Cork-Agreena Peninsula and the work that's being driven working with academia and the energy industry, but being led very much by the Dingle hub. And there's global opportunities that are being created for the companies and the businesses and the entrepreneurs that are working for there. And that's combined with the best quality of life for the innovators, for the entrepreneurs, and for the employees that are working out of these hubs. And some of those hubs are the likes of Sneem, the Sneem Digital Hub, the Dingle Hub, as I spoke about, the new RDI Hub facility developed with FEXCO, Kerry County Council, and Enterprise Ireland, and the MTU. You know, they offer really world-class research and innovation spaces and afford people the chance to live in really vibrant, energetic, and authentic communities. But also, you know, the hub network in Kerry extends up into North Kerry, into Listowel, into East Kerry, and towns like Dingle and Killarney obviously are very well serviced as well by the hub network. We also have, I suppose, a developing community hubs program as contributing to our economic and community development objectives. We've 10 BCP sites. They have different kind of service profiles. You know, some of them are just drive up Wi-Fi for community to use as they see fit, and others are developing in 6 thematic areas that would have been originally based on 4 teams from the department, and I suppose 2 more that were added in from our own draft digital strategy. So it's, you know, developing things like digital skills within the community, providing remote working services. You know, and a large number of our hub sites are part of the Connected Hubs program. We're developing thematic approaches with the Department of Arts and Culture within the community. Health and well-being is another pillar, and I suppose providing services out of hubs. We see that as a great opportunity going forward in the health arena. Community and engagement and participation in a kind of sustainable fashion, we think is a great opportunity for BCP sites. So, you know, heretofore people would have had to go to Tralee or other places to physically meet. Say it's a PPN meeting or an engagement with a forum, maybe the age-friendly forums or Pushton and Nog or whatever. You know, by using and leveraging the connectivity and the services that are available in the BCP sites, there's a more sustainable way to have that engagement and participation. That's something we're piloting in 2023 in Kerry. And I suppose then the other area is kind of the more formal education and research, you know, extending the opportunities that are there for people who are in the learning and the research space to undertake part of their education and research kind of away from maybe the noisy home environment or the interrupted home environment into a better space for undertaking that type of stuff. So it's great to see our BCP sites and other community hubs in Kerry developing along that pathway. And I suppose there's a nice kind of tie-in because Valentia Cable Station was the first BCP site we launched in Kerry. It's the literal birthplace of global telecoms connectivity. It's a candidate UNESCO World Heritage Site because of its importance in telecommunications history. It's obviously the landing place of the first transatlantic cable. So it is, I suppose, fitting that becomes kind of, I suppose, a new light, a new beacon, a fibre-powered beacon in time to allow us develop our hubs and service our communities with the best of digital. And to conclude, I suppose, from the various different initiatives that we've had, to achieve balanced regional development requires that connectivity. Digital connectivity, as we would have heard when we launched our BCP site at the Valentia Cable Station, it makes remote very much a 20th century concept. You and it makes it very much a redundant concept once that connectivity is in place, because you can fully participate. The connectivity is how world-leading companies in Kerry can prosper. Companies like Lieber Cranes and the Kerry Group, companies that are involved in agri-tech, like Dairy Master, companies that are involved in a whole range of areas like Tricell. They're able to compete globally because of that digital connectivity. But I suppose, crucially, from my learnings, the tech is great and it's an enabler. The most important connectivity piece, however, is the human connectivity and the partnerships when you want to look at the importance of impact and outcomes. The Black Valley Forum, I suppose, set up, and you saw, like, that was 2021. So within a relatively short period of time, it showed what can be achieved by talking, I suppose, crucially by listening, by aligning programs, and by a true partnership approach, bringing in government agencies, bringing in the community first and foremost, and bringing in the service providers. In terms of any advice that I give to telcos and towercos and to communities, I'd say get to know and get to work with your local broadband officer. There's one in every local authority area, and you'll find that they're a good ally in helping address issues and problems that you may have. And that role is acknowledged by the government, and I suppose at this forum as well. And I suppose the advice I'd give to the broadband officers, again, is in a similar vein. It's to work, with the 360-degree view of when you have a particular problem, who can help you solve it, and that is central government, it is the local community, it is industry, it's your local authority business unit colleagues, it's your planning, your economic development, your RRDF colleagues, your municipal district colleagues, your engineering colleagues. Work with them all, and work with your lags and your PPNs and your LCDCs. So establish those networks, and it's amazing what you might be able to achieve in a short period of time. Thanks to everybody for their attention at the forum and for tuning into this presentation. And I wish you success in your connectivity projects.